All right. So let's get right into it because we have so much to talk about and we have an hour before my baby comes home. And when baby comes home, things aren't as relaxed. So it's nice to have you guys all in here with us with Anne. Anne has been fruitarian for 32 years now, which is a long time. And she is thriving. She looks like she's in her 30s. I don't know how old she is, but she's amazing, super positive, super empowered fruitarian woman. So thank you, Anne. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Like who you are, what you do, where you live, and how you discovered this lifestyle.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name's Anne. I've been on a fruit-based diet for 32 years now. I currently live in far north Queensland in a subtropical area. We are in the latitude for the tropics, but because we're high elevation, it's subtropical, which is kind of the best of both worlds in a way, because you've got access to the really tropical fruits like durian and mangosteen and rambutan, but you've got that lovely fresh air, and there's something about living at high elevation that feels really healthy. So I was born in the UK, in England. I moved to Australia over 20 years ago now, and I had a beautiful time on the fruit diet when I was in the UK, but it is easier and more sustainable living in Australia because you can grow all year round a lot of fruit, and at the moment we're working towards self-sufficiency. I worked for 10 years in event management. Before that I was a massage therapist, but moving to the land, I have given up my online job so that I can spend time planting trees and looking after trees. And it's been a beautiful transition because I feel it's a lot healthier actually doing physical work on the land compared to being on a computer for 8 hours a day. So I'm really enjoying the self-sufficiency journey. It's a long journey, but it's an interesting one. So how I got to discover the fruitarian diet, it was over quite a few years. I was 20, I was already vegetarian, and I realized that ethically I needed to become vegan for myself, for my own ethical journey, because I was no longer comfortable with certain practices in the dairy and the egg industries. So overnight, I gave up all animal products. Now, I didn't do it for any health reasons. As far as I was aware, I was a healthy 20-year-old. I didn't have any serious health issues. But the very next day, after I gave up all dairy products and all egg products, I had a revelation. So I was at university at Canterbury at the time, which is in Kent in the UK. And my student digs were at the bottom of a hill, and the university campus was at the top of a hill. So every day I would have to walk up this hill to get to university. And every day, by the time I was at the top of the hill, and I was only 20, I would be tight in the chest and I would be wheezing. But the very next day, after I gave up all animal products, I suddenly realized I'm at the top of the hill and I'm not wheezy. And I'm not sort of like tight in the chest. And it was like, wow, I wasn't expecting any health benefits. But because it was the very next day, it was obvious to me it was giving up all animal products that had brought about this change in my health. And I have never, ever had that since, that tightness or that wheezy, ever since I gave up all animal products. So that set me off on this journey because I realized that there's a connection between what we put in our bodies and how we feel. So I started to read and research about different types of vegan diet, and the veganism was non-negotiable. I was always going to be vegan for ethical reasons, but I was interested within that sort of parameter of veganism to find out what was the healthiest diet for me. So I tried an Ann Wigmore sprouts and wheatgrass type of vegan diet. I tried a macrobiotic vegan diet where I was eating a lot of cooked food, but it was all organic. I tried a general whole foods vegan diet, and I felt pretty good on all of those, but not that good that I stuck with any one of them for more than about a year, 18 months. And then in 1990, I was back in my hometown of Leicester in the UK. And I was part of a local animal rights group. And we had speakers occasionally. And one week we had a speaker called David Shelley. Now, David Shelley was a local lad, and he was also a fruitarian. And it was really interesting listening to him talk. He was a great advert for the diet. He was very fit. He was very healthy. He was glowing. He cycled everywhere. And obviously, whatever he was doing was working really well for him. And there was a whole group of us. We were all ethical vegans, and we thought, we want some of this. We want some of what he's got. And some of my friends went straight from a general vegan diet onto a fruitarian diet. Now, I was in the early stages of my first pregnancy at the time, so I thought, I'm not going to do anything too drastic. I'm going to transition because I'm pregnant and I don't want any sort of like release of toxins that's going to negatively affect the developing baby. So over a period of about a year, I gradually ate more and more fruit and less cooked foods until at the end of that period, I was on 100% fruitarian diet. And two things really helped me during this period. The first was we had a group of about 60 of us that were all on this journey together. So we had the social support, which was wonderful. And the second thing was we formed an organic fruit buying group. Because we were in the UK and we couldn't really access great quality fruit all year round in the UK, especially if it's organic. So we formed this organic fruit buying group where we wholesaled wonderful fruit from all over the world. And that really helped as well. So those two things, having the social network, the social support, and also having really good quality fruit. So that's how I ended up on a fruit diet. And I've stuck with it, and it's stuck with me for the past 32 years. And it's really worked on every level. It's worked ethically, environmentally, and health-wise. So, yeah, that's how I got here. And I'm still on the fruit diet, and I'm ethically vegan, but for health and ethical reasons, I'm also on a fruit-based diet.
Amazing. What an amazing journey to get you here to this point. And I love everything you said. I love that you said that what you needed, the first two things, was that community and the good quality. Also happened to me. I also, when I went fruitarian, I needed that community, which I moved to a community in Costa Rica, and I did that. And also in Costa Rica, they have really good quality fruit. So making that move, that bold move somewhere that, or creating that network where you get the best quality fruit is also really important. A lot of times people are complaining about bad quality fruit, but sometimes we have to, if we can't leave where we live, we can find the best quality. Do you agree with that? Like shop around and
Yes, for sure. And when something's important to us, we'll make the time to do that. So when I lived in the UK, as well as having the buying group, I'd go to all the ethnic stores, I'd go to the local open air market, I'd know which supermarkets had the best fruit, and I'd made it work. And when something is very important to you, I think you do make it work. And I think it's also important to have faith in that. And if you say, oh, I can't access good quality organic fruit, or I can't afford good quality organic fruit, you're setting yourself up for that to happen. So it's like having faith in God, but tying your camel as well. So have faith that you're going to get this good quality fruit, but also put in the work. And so that fruit comes into your life. And I think that's very, very important. And I've been a single mother on a very low income, and I've still managed to afford really good quality organic fruit because it was important to me. I made it work. So a lot of people who say, I can't afford it, I've been there and I still made it work. I formed a buying group to reduce the costs. I knew which stores and shops sold the organic fruit. I looked out for bargains. So I have been in a situation where I was a single parent, very low income, and still was able to eat the majority of my food organic. So have that faith, believe that it can happen, and it's much more likely to happen. But yes, you do need to do the work as well.
I love that. Thank you. That's very inspirational, because a lot of people do say that's like a negative to lifestyle. But if you want it enough, if your health is important enough, if you want to feel the best you can in your body, this is the lifestyle for you. Like you said, like you tried out all the different diets, and this is the diet that felt best for you, right? And how about,
Yes.
are you eating, did you go for straight fruitarian, or are you raw? What's your diet?
Well, yes. So during the transition, the guy that I met, David Shelley, and he'd written a book, and he was very much influenced by Arnold Ehret. And I also read Arnold Ehret's works in the beginning of my journey. And so Arnold Ehret basically was about eating fruit and tender leafy greens if desired, but it wasn't like a requisite. You didn't have to eat green leafy vegetables. You could just eat fruit if you wanted to. And so my transition was eating more and more fruit in mono meals and less cooked vegan food. And that's how I still eat today. I eat mono meals of local if possible, organic if possible, homegrown if possible, fruit. And that's what works for me. I never went through a raw gourmet stage, because the works that I read at the beginning, Arnold Ehret and David Shelley, were really about eating mono meals of fruit. Occasionally, if I'm having a party, I'll make a fruit salad or I'll make a fruitarian cake. But day to day, I enjoy mono meals of fruit. And I think there's several advantages to eating mono meals. One of them is that it's the easiest way to digest fruit. If you're eating one type of fruit, it has the least expenditure of energy on your digestive system. Another important reason for me is that you have to eat good quality fruit when you eat mono meals. That fruit has to stand alone. I've heard people say, oh, I got a cantaloupe melon. It didn't taste very good, so I blended it with some papaya and then I ate it. If you're eating something by itself, it has to be of good quality. And we only have so much space in our bodies to eat fruit. So why not eat the best quality fruit? And when you eat mono meals, that really does have to be good quality, because you're not mixing, you're not blending, you're not doing anything to the fruit to disguise that it's less than good. It has to be good. Another reason for eating mono meals is that you can see if something agrees with you or if it doesn't. And everybody's got slight differences. So if you're eating mono meals and you think, well, I didn't feel so good after that mono meal of, say, blackberries or whatever it was, and then you try again and you have the same feelings, you know that that's what it is. Whereas if you're having a lot of mixes, it's often hard to tell if something doesn't quite agree with you. So for me, mono meals are, what has worked and what I like to do. And so I haven't really changed. Once I transitioned, my diet is pretty much the same as it was at the beginning, although it's affected by where I'm living, what season it is, because I try to eat seasonally if possible. But yeah, mono meals is the way that I started and the way that I'm still eating on this diet.
Amazing. And so your transition was pretty quick. Did you have any struggles with that, like cravings, food addictions, like getting over that, missing the cooked meal at night? Like, did you have to deal with any of that? And if you did, what helped you get through that hump until you got to where you are today?
I think I had a pretty good transition, and I believe the reason for this was that I'd been gradually refining my diet. So ever since I went vegan and realized there was this connection between what we consume and how we feel, right at the beginning, I cut out processed sugar. I cut out white flour. I cut out most processed foods. So in those 4 years between starting on veganism and transitioning towards the fruitarian diet, I had already cut out a lot of highly processed foods in my diet. So by the time I was transitioning to a fruit diet, I didn't really notice any elimination. And I was doing it gradually because I was pregnant. And one thing I really noticed with the transitional diet, and I think this has helped me to stay on my fruitarian diet long term, was that during that transitional diet, I would have periods where I was 100% on fruit. I would have periods when I was on 90% fruit. I would have periods when I was on 85% fruit. And the food that I wasn't eating that wasn't fruit would be in the evening, would be very simple, something like an Irish potato baked or a sweet potato baked. And I might have it with a bit of avocado, but nothing else, very simple. But what I noticed during that transitional period was if I had cooked food for more than one day, so for 2 days in a row or more, my body odor would change. How I felt first thing in the morning would change. The taste in my mouth first thing in the morning was different, and I didn't like it as much. So I was really ready to let cooked food go. And having said that, I'm not saying that that's the best for everyone. For me, 100% raw works the best and I feel the best. But some people do well on different percentages. I think everybody has to find what works for them. But having that transitional period and experiencing, for me, the difference between 100% fruit and 85%, 95%, 90%, which I played around with in that transitional period, really gave me the facts that for me, I felt best on 100% fruit. So I was really ready to let it go. It wasn't a denial. At that point, I was ready to let the cooked food go. I was ready to have all raw, all fruit. And I think if I'd gone straight into the fruit diet, I wouldn't have had that transitional period. I wouldn't have had that experience of knowing how I felt on 95% fruit compared to 100% fruit or compared to 80% fruit. So for me, I didn't really experience any cravings. And I was ready to let the cooked food go. And I think when you're ready to let it go, it's very different from saying, oh, I want cooked food, but I'm not going to have it. And I think one tip that I've shared with a lot of people that has been very helpful for people that are having cravings for cooked food and would rather not be eating cooked food is something that I got from the Beverly Hills Diet by Judy Mazel. Now, Judy Mazel wasn't vegan, she wasn't vegetarian, but she understood fruit. And in her book, she advised people to have 3 or 4 days a week of mono fruit diets. So she really understood the benefit of fruit. And what she said to somebody who was on a fruit day and wanted to eat cooked food or something else, say to yourself, nothing's leaving the planet. It'll still be there tomorrow if I really want to have it. And then 9 times out of 10, when tomorrow comes, you don't want that food anymore. But when you say to yourself, I can't have it, when you feel you're denying yourself something, then your body can often rebel. Like, I'm never going to have that again. Well, I want that. So subconsciously, I'm going to make you want that food. But if we say to ourselves, I can't have it, that's putting up that resistance. But if we say, nothing's leaving the planet, if I really want that food, it'll still be there tomorrow, then that can really help with cravings. Another thing I think that can help with cravings, if you're craving savory food, have more of the savory fruits. Have avocado or cucumber or bell pepper and introduce those foods for a meal. You can have a nice meal if you eat mixed fruit. You can have a nice sort of salady meal of tomatoes, capsicums, cucumbers, avocados, and that can often help with the savory cravings that some people get. So yeah, they're the tips I would say to transition, and also give yourself permission to have something the next day if you really want it, because you probably won't want it when the next day comes. But denying yourself stuff can give you resistance to, oh, how can you say that? I don't want to never have this food again. but it's, we can self-sabotage in that way.
Wow, it's so true. And I think that's really, really key to what you said. You were so convicted. That's how you changed your lifestyle, because you felt how good it felt living this lifestyle. And you said, why would I go back? So really noting in your body, for example, how good you feel on these monomeals, noting that. And if you do have a cooked meal, note what happens after that. Like, it's never as good. And the cooked food is never as good as we imagine it to be. Like,
Yes,
so it's all about the mindset, right, Anne?
And I think another important thing is to be kind to yourself. If you have a food that you'd rather not be eating, don't say, I failed, I'm stupid, why did I have that? What an idiot. Be kind to yourself. Don't judge yourself. Look at consequences instead without judging. So if you have a packet of salty chips instead of having a mango, and the next morning you feel puffy, bloated, slower, not as fresh, be aware of those consequences and think, well, if I'd had the mango, or remember when you have a mango, the next morning you feel alive, ready to jump out of bed. Note the consequences rather than being unkind to yourself. Because if you're unkind to yourself, if you say, I failed, if you use that negative language on yourself, you're more likely to sabotage yourself because you think, I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I can't do anything. But just look at the consequences, because consequences are important, but without judging. The consequences of how you feel eating one way to how you feel eating another. And when you look at those consequences and think, well, when I eat this way, I feel fantastic, then that, I think, can be very helpful rather than judging or being unkind or being rough on yourself. So I think that's very important to bear in mind. You're not a failure. You haven't failed. You've experienced something. You've had consequences that aren't as effective as other consequences, but you haven't failed and you're not a failure. I think not using those negative terms, not using negative language if you eat something that you'd rather not be eating. I think that's very important.
That's beautiful. Self-compassion is so important on this journey. This is a holistic journey. I always say it. It's not just about what we're eating. It's all of our bodies, our emotional body, mental, physical, spiritual. Have you also felt other improvements, not just physically, but after incorporating this diet? Do you feel stronger emotionally, mentally, spiritually, anything like that?
For sure. It's a very holistic way of living. One thing I've noticed is my connection with music and sound and vibration. When I hear music, I can't stop moving. I just feel like I want to dance. I feel this real flow with certain noises, and something particular is the didgeridoo, which is an indigenous Australian instrument, which is very kind of, it reverberates and it's very earthy. And when I hear anything like that, it really has much more of an effect on me. It's like there's a clearer pathway for the sound, for the music vibrations. And emotionally, I feel very connected with the planet, very much more connected with the plants and trees and animals and everything. And it's this wonderful connection. And especially when I do an extended mono diet, I feel it even more. I just feel this real joy and real love, and just like really seeing the positive, because I know we live in a world where there are a lot of challenges, and I know sometimes it's hard to be positive, but I do feel that a fruit diet helps with seeing that positivity, because if we focus on all the more negative things, we would never get out of bed in the morning. So I think it's very important to focus on the positive, and that doesn't mean ignoring the challenges that are going on in the world and ignoring trying to help when we can try and help with campaigns, try and, save forests from being logged or save animals from being harmed. I think that's important, but as well, looking at the positives and focusing on the positives, because that gives us more energy to devote to dealing with the injustices and the sad things that are going on in the world. So yeah, it's been on all levels. emotionally, mentally feeling very clear, mentally being able to work at mentally challenging jobs. So yeah, it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all of it has been enhanced, and it's a very holistic diet, I believe.
That's beautiful. And emotionally, for me, it's really, really interesting, the emotional part, not just about the benefits, but a lot of times people are eating cooked food because of their emotions. They're trying to hide their emotions, cover them up, or, emotional eating is a huge thing. Do you have any input on this, or anything that if someone is having an emotion, what they can do instead of eating the cooked food, or do you have any insight on this?
I think short term, you can change your focus. I think you can look at what time. Is it 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you suddenly feel the desire to eat a food you'd rather not be eating? Change your focus totally from food. Go for a walk, go for a run, do some dancing, have a nice warm bath with some essential oils, do some self-massage on your feet. Shift that focus. And I think by shifting the focus from food, that can really help, because you're feeding yourself in a different way emotionally. If you're having a nice warm bath with essential oils, you're giving yourself a nice, pleasurable experience. If you're exercising or running, you're getting your endorphins. So you're getting pleasure in that way. And it's, I think, shifting the focus at that time is a short-term measure. I think long-term, a lot of us have trauma. Most of it comes from a childhood, and it doesn't necessarily all disappear when you change your diet. Yes, your diet may help you deal with it, but at the same time, when you're on a raw vegan diet, you've not got those safety blankets, you've not got those emotional sort of like numbing foods, those comfort foods that can often block emotional. It's more raw, or it can be more raw in that emotional sense, because you're not blocking it with drugs or alcohol or heavy foods. And I think while diet is a huge part of our wellness, we also have to look at our trauma, which can be mostly from childhood, and we have to work at that, and we have to look at strategies, whether it's therapy, whether it's being part of a support group, whether it's doing meditation, whether it's doing visualizations, but work on that to deal with the trauma, because it can come up, and it can come up more on a raw vegan diet where you're eating unprocessed foods, because you're not blocking that. And we might feel that we have to, our emotions are more raw on a raw diet. So short term, there are fixes, but I think really we have to look at long term. We have to look at past trauma and past things in our lives that have really impacted us on an emotional level, and try to find strategies to heal from that. So it's not just about diet. It's about getting support from other people, maybe working through past issues with a parent or with someone in your life that has caused you trauma, whether it's physically with them or whether it's just visualizing them and writing them a letter and then burning that letter. So I think it's important to look at why we're emotionally eating. We can change the focus short term, but I think unless we deal with the underlying trauma that's causing our emotional eating, and most of us have had trauma. It's a very rare person that's had a perfect childhood and a perfect life that hasn't experienced trauma. And then finding strategies to deal with that trauma as an alternative to comfort eating, whether it's breathing, meditation, group support, going inwards and working on ourselves.
Beautiful. There's so many light workers these days. So many people are dedicating their lives to healing. So I also agree. I think therapy is an awesome thing to start doing. I think everyone deserves a therapist. Everyone deserves a little extra help and support. And our emotions are super important. And a lot of times we're not listening to them. So thank you so much. That was such an important point that you brought up, and so key. Before maybe in like 15 minutes, we're going to do some Q&A, but I wanted to ask a couple other questions before. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a mom and I'm pregnant, but I would love to hear a little bit about your journey as a mama, raising raw vegan children, raising fruitarian children, and how that was for you. If you want to touch on that a little bit. I know you had the pregnancy, and then after the pregnancy, is that when you went fruitarian?
Yeah. And raising my children has been the best experience of my life. I've loved it. It's been wonderful. And I kind of, before I had children, I wanted to have children. But one thing that I wasn't looking forward to was meal times. Friends of mine who'd already had children, and you'd go around to their house, and it was like meals were like a battlefield. I was thinking, this looks so stressful. I'm really looking forward to having kids. But it was like, you have to eat this, then you can have that. And the children were screaming. And it was just in several households that I went into, I was thinking, it's really like stressful feeding kids. Oh, my goodness. And then because by the time my children started to eat, my elder boy, when he was quite small, a few months old, I was on a fruit diet. It was so beautiful. There was so much flow. I just loved feeding my kids a fruit diet, and long-term breastfeeding was very important to me. I do believe that children need milk, and ideally mother's milk, for 3.5 to 4 years. So if you're contemplating having children, you have to think about that. If you're going to be raw vegan, are you happy long-term breastfeeding? Because I don't believe that there is a real alternative to mother's milk. Plant milks, animal milks, I don't think are as good. We really need to long-term breastfeed. And if we're raw vegans, are we prepared to do that? It's difficult. It can be challenging in our society to long-term breastfeed, because somebody can see a 4-year-old child drinking a glass of cow's milk. Now that milk has been taken from, it could be 100 different cows by the time it's been mixed up and in that glass. But people see that as normal, natural, and healthy. If people see a 4-year-old child being breastfed, because it's not usual, they tend to see it as weird and strange and unnatural, when it's much more natural than a child drinking a glass of cow's milk. But it's that, the society's sort of like protocols and things, and what society sees as normal and natural, and what they don't. So we can be challenged by that. And we have to, I think, do our research and feel strong to stand up against some of the social norms that aren't necessarily the most ideal. And it's a similar thing with co-sleeping. I co-slept with both my children, and they will get to a point eventually where they won't want to co-sleep anymore. They won't still be in the bed with you, when they're 15 or anything. It doesn't happen. But again, people see that as weird or unnatural. They'll see it as okay for a mother to leave a newborn baby to cry itself to sleep every night until it gets used to the fact that no one's going to come and save it. And that will be childhood trauma. But they see it as weird or strange if you're sleeping in the same bed as your baby, when every other mammal sleeps with their babies for protection, for safety, for feeding at night. But humans, it's seen as weird if we do it. But look at the other mammals. They sleep with their young for many, many reasons. The only contraindication to not sleeping with your baby would be if you were taking recreational or allopathic medicine, because you have a natural, like, subconscious thing going on in your brain that you won't squash your baby. And they've done like photography through a night. 2 adults can be in the bed with a baby and they'll naturally move out of the way. If you have allopathic medicine, or if you have recreational drugs, that can interfere with your natural safety sort of protection of not rolling on your baby. The other contraindication would be if you're very much over your ideal weight. But apart from that, it is very safe to sleep with your baby. You might hear of cases in hospitals where mothers have suffocated their babies. And in those cases, the mothers have been on a lot of drugs just having given birth. But if you're not over your ideal weight, and if you're not taking any medication or any recreational drugs, you will not squash your baby. So, you know, that is something that people do worry about. And I would suggest, if you're thinking of having and raising a child and co-sleeping, read a lot of books. There's a good book called Three in a Bed by Deborah Jackson. I read that when I was pregnant with my first child, and I'm really glad I did. I just got it out of the local library because I started off co-sleeping right from the beginning. So I found the whole experience of bringing up children on a fruitarian diet just a blessing. They've had lots of energy, but they've not been hyperactive. I've been able to take them anywhere with me from quite a young age. I've done market stalls and had my little child sitting there for 4 hours at a market stall being quite happy. I've gone to meetings and my children have sat there very quietly. They're not hyperactive. They can sit and they can listen, but at the same time, they've got lots of good energy. So for me, the whole child rearing has just been beautiful. And I think it's not just diet. I think the continuum concept or attachment parenting is also very important, because you could be bringing your child up on a fruitarian diet. You could have the best breast milk, the healthiest breast milk in the world, but if you're not giving your child the love and security that they need, then that child is not going to be healthy. So I think the two go in tandem. A fruitarian diet with long-term breastfeeding, and also the continuum concept, that attachment parenting. And it's quite intense the first few years of doing that. But with both my children, they became very independent very early on, because at the beginning, they'd always got this sense of security and love. There was always someone there with them. They never felt abandoned. They never were alone. And so even though those first few years can be intense, once the child gets to 4, 5, and 6, they become remarkably independent, because they don't need to be clingy to you all the time, because they know inside that you're always there for them. So, yeah, it's just been the best experience for me bringing up children on the diet. I've loved it. Beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with all of that you said. So, and it's very reassuring. Summer's 2.5, so I'm looking forward to that moment when I feel like all the hard work is paid off. And did you feel your children always had you didn't feel like there were deficiencies? You know, I went to a pediatrician the other day just to do a checkup. I have to here in Costa Rica. It's like the law. And, I won't even say that she's fruitarian, because I know that it's going to cause major issues. So yes. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about the best diet. But did you feel like this was sufficient diet for your children? They were always healthy and...
Yes. Yeah, they weren't immunized and they got none of the childhood illnesses. And like with chickenpox, it's supposed to be better that your child gets chickenpox when they're young. It doesn't affect them as much. So with my eldest son, he went to school with kids that had chickenpox. His cousins had chickenpox. We were on holiday camping and the other children at the campsite had chickenpox. Go and play with them. Go on, But he never got any signs of chickenpox. And what is interesting is that later on, he had some blood tests and they found out that he had natural immunity to chickenpox. So that for me is perfect. Your child has a healthy immune system, so they come into contact with the chickenpox virus. They get natural immunity to it, but they show no symptoms of it. And for me, that is the ideal. If we're bringing our children up with a healthy diet and lifestyle, they get natural immunity without any of the side effects of allopathic immunization. They get natural immunity. So they've got the antibodies, they've got the protection to these viruses, but they don't actually get the viruses. So, yeah, I think for me, that is just, amazing that they're healthy and they have natural protection. But in terms of their diet being sufficient, there's lots of indicators that your child is healthy. Not just figures on a piece of paper, and often the growth charts. People say, well, my child isn't on the growth charts, and they get worried. When I was in the UK with my first son, I had quite an understanding health visitor. And she said, your child isn't on the standard growth charts, but he is on the growth charts of an Asian vegetarian. And I thought, well, that makes sense. That makes more sense. And I was very fortunate. I didn't get any sort of like criticism for the diet that my son was on. And I wanted him to be tested for B12. And I was giving him a supplement at the time, but I still wanted him to be tested just to make sure his B12 was okay when he was about 6, because I thought he was breastfed till he was 3.5 and you can store B12. And the doctor said, no, we're not going to give him a blood test for B12. We want him to go to a government nutritionist, write down everything he eats and everything he drinks for 2 weeks. And I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. This is a bog standard government nutritionist going to be analysing my son's diet. And they did this and the results came back. And I was really amazed with the results because I thought they're going to say, he's not meeting this, he's not meeting that. They said he's meeting all his RDAs with the exception of calcium, which is 70% of what it should be. Now, he grew very, very healthily with no cavities, no fillings. He's now 32 and he's still got no dental decay. So obviously he was getting sufficient calcium. And if you're on a plant-based diet, you often need less calcium than on an animal food diet because if you're having an alkaline forming diet, calcium doesn't need to be pulled out of your blood or your bones to sort of like buffer your pH levels. So yeah, I had no doubts that they were happy, they were healthy, they didn't get sick, and they had lots of energy without being hyperactive. If they hurt themselves, their wounds healed quickly. They didn't get any of the childhood illnesses. So there's all these things to look for. Their skin was good, and their general immunity was very, very good. So I think you've got to be aware. You've got to have faith in the diet, but not blind faith. You've not got to say, right, my child's on a fruitarian diet and they're going to be fine. Every day you've got to be looking out. Are they getting what they need? Is their immune system good? Are they developing as they should be? And so it's an ongoing thing. You don't just say, right, I'm going to do this and that's it. So it's having faith, but not blind faith, and faith that's built on your everyday experiences, researching, reading. And I'm still researching and reading on the fruitarian diet now. It's just it's something that I really enjoy to do, so that you have the knowledge, you've got the scientific knowledge, you've got the biological knowledge, you've got the dietary knowledge. And so that when people say to you, well, how can you bring up a child on a fruit-based diet? You can say, well, for this reason and that reason. So yes, it's not just sort of like saying, right, I'm going to put my child on a fruit diet and everything's going to be okay. You do have to do the groundwork as well.
Thank you, Anne. That's a lot of really good information. Thank you for sharing. So before we go to a little bit of Q&A with our listeners, what would you say you've already talked about this before, but your like top pointers, just to, even if you're repeating yourself, it's fine, but the top pointers for succeeding on a fruit diet long-term, not just a 15-day cleanse, but a long-term diet, because this is really the best diet, I think, and we see. So what are some top pointers for our listeners today?
That's a great question. I've got 3 main ones. And the first one is to be ready to go on a fruit diet, to be ready emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And a transitional diet can be very helpful for a lot of people. Not everybody does the transitional diet. Essie Honorable, who was one of the pioneers of this diet in recent times, a South African lady, and Arnold Ehret, who was also another pioneer, both of them advocated for transitional diets to help you ease into this way of living. So I would say be ready. And a transitional diet can be a big part of being ready to go on the diet. The second thing is to get great quality fruit. And within that great quality fruit, I'd say fruit that's grown in really good soil, so it's got the minerals in it. fruit that is picked properly ripe, and fruit that doesn't have chemical residues in it. I think are the three things in that. I wouldn't have been able to thrive on the diet without good quality fruit. And I think if you can't get good quality fruit, you maybe have to look at reassessing and maybe having more greens or nuts or vegetables if you can't access quality fruit. Because if we can't get the micronutrients we need, we are not going to thrive on this diet. And it is about thriving. I think macros, which is fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, it's pretty easy to get your needs met on this diet. But the micronutrients, which are not talked about as much as the macros, and the micronutrients are your vitamins, your minerals, and your antioxidants. Yeah, we really need to ensure they're met to thrive on this diet. So that's all about getting the best possible quality fruit. And one thing that I would just like to talk on quickly is why organic fruit is so important. And I've mentioned this in a lot of my talks, but I think it's so important. A lot of people say it doesn't matter. You don't have to eat organic. It's not that much better. Now, one reason why organic is so much better, or non-sprayed or wild foraged fruit, but be careful, make sure you know what you're getting when you forage, you don't poison yourself, is that fruit that is grown where there are no chemicals, that fruit will have, the fruit tree has an amazing symbiotic relationship with the fungi or the mycelium in the soil. So what the fungi and the mycelium in the soil do, they break down bonds in certain molecules. So for example, calcium phosphate, the tree cannot absorb that calcium. And also like calcium carbonate, if you put lime on your garden, that tree cannot absorb that calcium without the help of the fungi. What the fungi do is break down those inaccessible bonds to make the calcium in a form that the tree can absorb. And because it's a symbiotic relationship, in return, now the fungi can't photosynthesize. Trees photosynthesize, and photosynthesis is when the trees take in carbon dioxide and water. And in the presence of sunshine, they create carbohydrates. Now, because the fungi haven't got leaves, they can't do that. So the trees pass on carbohydrates to the fungi, and in return, the fungi break down these bonds so that tree will take in more calcium. Now, if you put herbicides, fungicides, pesticides on that soil, it kills the fungi, it kills the mycelium. So there isn't that relationship. That fruit tree will not be absorbing the calcium that a fruit tree is absorbing when the soil doesn't have chemicals in it. And so the big thing is, when we eat organic, biodynamic, non-sprayed, homegrown fruit, it will contain more calcium and also other minerals. It's not just calcium that the fungi help the tree absorb. So this to me is vital. And when I hear people saying it's not important to get organic fruit, I think you need to know this, because it really, really is important. And if you're growing food and you see fungus, mushrooms, toadstools in the soil, you know, be thankful, because that's a really good sign that your soil is healthy. We really need those mycelium, we need the fungi to create that calcium and also other minerals in the trees. So yeah. And the third thing, so the first thing was to be ready. The second is great quality fruit. The third thing is to have faith, but not blind faith, which I mentioned before. So to do your research, to do your reading, learn about anatomy, physiology, biology, dietetics, learn your stuff, and then you will feel really confident because you will have the knowledge. Network with other people, because if we don't feel confident in what we're doing, other people will pick up on it and we will maybe not be ready. We will maybe not be fully prepared to embark on this diet. So they're the three things that I would say: to be ready for the diet, to get good quality fruit, and to have faith, but not blind faith. Faith that's built on your own research, your own networking, your own reading. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. You're really a wealth of information. Wow. So much amazing information. Thank you so much. Before we close, I would love to open this space for some people to ask Anne some questions. If anybody wants to ask something, they can raise their hand. Yui, you want to start?
Yes. Hi, Anne. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. This is amazing. Just a quick question. Do you monitor how much you eat, or do you eat till you get full? How many times, especially the mono fruit eating? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't count calories. I have as much as I feel I need. And I also am aware of my weight. So when I started out on this diet, I probably ate twice as much as I do now. And I felt that I needed to eat more to maintain my weight because I didn't want to go below a certain weight. And then I did an extended mono diet of 52 days on orange juice. And I went into this with no expectations. I just went to accompany a friend who wanted to do it. But what I found was at the end of the 52 days, I needed to eat a lot less fruit to maintain my weight. And I didn't at the time, I didn't know why. I just thought, wow, this is interesting. But further down the track, I realized that I was assimilating a lot more of what I was eating. So it's not just about the calories going in. To me, that's half an equation. It's really about how much we're assimilating. So we could have two people. We could have person A. Now, person A has had a pretty poor diet as a child. They've taken a lot of allopathic medication. They've taken a lot of recreational drugs. They've had Crohn's disease. Now, their digestive system is in a pretty bad state. Now, in our digestive tract, we have microscopic projections called villi, and they're like little fingers, and they extend the surface area of the digestive system. If they are damaged, we can't assimilate as much because the surface area is reduced. We maybe only have a few little villi in there instead of the full amount. So person A could be eating 5,000 calories a day and only assimilating 15% of what they're eating due to their digestive issues. We've got person B. Now, person B is eating 2,500 calories a day, but they're assimilating 90% of what they're eating because they were raised on a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. They've taken very little medication. They've taken very little recreational drugs. And so their digestive system is functioning really well. So even though person A is eating twice as many calories as person B is actually assimilating more. So it really depends how much you eat. I would never recommend a certain amount of calories to any one person because how much you're assimilating, your gender, your activity level, your current health, your metabolic rate, all determine how much you will assimilate. So you will everyone will need to eat a different amount of calories. As a general rule, if you're putting on weight and you don't want to put on weight, you're probably eating more than you need. If you're losing weight and you don't want to be losing weight, you're probably eating less than you need. So if your weight is stable and you're happy with that, and your immune system is good, your skin, your hair, your teeth, wounds heal quickly, you're probably getting your macronutrient needs met and your micronutrient needs met. So I never say there's a set amount that people need to eat. It's a very individual thing, and a lot of that depends on how well you're assimilating your food. And what you can find as you progress, your digestive system will heal and you will need to eat a smaller amount of fruit. And a lot of people I know that have been doing this long term have come to that same conclusion. They need to eat a lesser amount. So there's no one right amount for everyone. If someone says everybody has to eat 3,000 calories a day, They may need to eat 3,000 calories a day, but not everyone. Some people will need to eat more. Some people will need to eat less. Similarly, if someone says everyone needs to eat 1,500 calories a day, that could be true for some people, but not everyone. So I think eating as much as you need to, and especially if you're eating mono meals, you will naturally feel satisfied. Sometimes you'll find if you're eating really good quality fruit, you will need to eat less. If you're foraging wild blackberries, for example, you can feel satiated on a few handfuls of berries, whereas if you're eating store-bought fruit that has fewer micronutrients, you will need to eat more. With mono diets, I tend to eat 2 or 3 meals a day. When I'm eating a mixed fruit diet, I will have maybe 3 or 4 mono meals a day. So it just depends. Sometimes if I'm busy, I'll only have 2 meals a day. Depends on, what's going on in my life. But I think eat for you as an individual. Individual needs are so important and they're often overlooked. And Arnold Ehret, who was a pioneer in this, said, the reason that most people fail at fasting and fruit-based diets is that individual needs are not taken into consideration and changes over time. So that shows that things can change over time and we all have individual needs. So I think that's very important. See how you're doing on the amount you eat. If you're not feeling satisfied, if you're losing weight, you might need to eat more. If you're gaining weight when you don't want to be gaining weight, you might need to eat less. It's very much an individual thing. I think it's very hard to overeat on fresh, juicy fruit because you feel satiated. And that amount that people eat, as I said before, will vary before they feel satiated. I think one exception is avocados. I think people can overeat on avocados. I have noticed this, but in general, with most of the fruits, it's very hard to eat more than you actually need.
So perfectly put. Thank you so much, Anne. Thanks for your question, Yui. We have time for one more question. Does anyone else have another question they want to ask?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. I want to ask about juicing. How do you feel about juicing?
I think juicing, for me, ultimately, whole fruit is optimal. I don't think you can ever improve on a whole piece of fruit. But for some people, juicing can be very, very useful. If somebody has an issue with their teeth, if they find it difficult to eat whole fruit, then juicing can be a way that they can get the macronutrients and the micronutrients that they need if they're not able to chew very much. So I think juicing can have a place. Optimally, I think you can't improve on a whole piece of fruit. I do a lot of orange juice mono diets, extended mono diets, and I use a hand juicer, so I leave quite a bit of the fiber in the juice. I find that I feel just as well when I do an orange juice diet as compared to when I'm eating the oranges. I don't notice much difference. There's also been studies shown that orange juice still helps regulate insulin spikes. So even if you're not having the whole fruit, because the sugar in fruit, people will say sugar's bad. And it's been shown that if you have a certain amount of refined sugar, then you add whole fruit to that, the total amount of sugar, including the fruit sugar, will increase, but the insulin spikes and sort of like the effect on your blood and your feeling sort of dipping in energy will actually improve, and it will still improve adding fruit juice. So even though that fruit juice hasn't got the fiber in, there's still compounds in fruit juice that can help with insulin spikes. So I do believe that juice can be a healthy food. I think, again, it's a very individual thing. If you feel better eating whole fruits, that's great. If adding some juice really helps you to maintain your nutritional needs every day, if you've got dental issues and chewing fruit can exacerbate your condition, then juices and smoothies can be a way when there's less contact of the fruit on your teeth, especially if you use a straw. So I think when I talk about juices, I'm talking about fresh squeezed juices. I think juices made from concentrate, juices that have got added refined sugar in, juices that are pasteurized are not the same. I think definitely fresh squeezed juice can have a place in the diet, but I think if you prefer to eat whole fruit, then go for that. I don't think there's any absolute rights and wrongs. And I think for some people, juicing can be helpful. A lot of people have healed doing juice regimes when that juice is fresh squeezed. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for your question. Thanks, Anne. Well, so for people that want to, does someone else have another question? A quick question?
Jacob Richards had his hand up.
I do.
Okay.
I had a question. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I've been reading recently, and I found that there are, according to the sources that I've read, that there are 3 classes of fruits, right? So you have your astringents, such as your citrus fruits, apples, pears, peaches, stuff like that, that will pull toxins out of the cells. And then you have your antioxidants, such as berries, cherries, things of that nature. And then you have your phytonutrients, things like melons, papayas, cantaloupes, honeydews. So I guess what my question would be is, do melons and phytonutrients, do you know if those things should be consumed by themselves, or because I've read if you're going to pull the toxins out, you're going to replenish with the antioxidants, and then the phytonutrients are helping lock in those antioxidants. So you really want to opt for eating melons by themselves. Do you know if that's true or if that's not true?
I think melons digest very quickly. So I think eating melons by themselves is always a good option, because if you eat melons with something else, the melons will go through your digestive system so much more quickly, especially with heavier fruits, something like dried fruit or avocado or bananas. I would never, ever eat, with melons. I think melons are best eaten on their own. I think classifying fruits into boxes is I think all fruits have got phytonutrients and all fruits have got antioxidants in. Some might be higher than others. There is one thing I've noticed with citrus, though, because you said they're in the astringent. When I do a mono diet of citrus, it is much more cleansing than a mono diet of papaya or a mono diet of melons or even a mono diet of grapes. They are cleansing to some extent, but oranges is another level. I would say orange juice is almost on a level with water fasting, but not quite in terms of cleansing. So I do think that astringent fruits can I feel that oranges, for me, draw out toxins in a way that, say, papayas or melons don't when I've been on those mono diets. So I think each fruit may have sort of like more of one property, but I think within that, fruits sort of overlap. So berries, they've got phytonutrients and they've got antioxidants, and melons have got both as well, especially the deeper colored, the orange fleshed melons. So I think mono meals can, as I spoke about before, can be useful, because eating one type of fruit at a time, you only eat good quality fruit and it's the easiest on your digestive system. But I think it's hard to classify fruits as one thing. They may have that as the overriding characteristic, but they'll also have other benefits as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That answers my question.
Thanks for the question, and thank you, Anne. Wow, you have so much information. You should write a book, Anne. How can people get in touch with you in the future if they want to chat with you more, if they want to, Yeah,
well, I have a Facebook page, which is Fruit by Anne, I think is the URL if you search for Anne Osborne. And I put a lot of information about fruit and fruit growing on my Facebook page. I've also got some albums in my photos, some on newspaper clippings, lots of old newspaper clippings. Before Big Pharma kind of took over, so before the 1950s arrived, there were lots of syndicated columns, information extolling the benefits of fruit and fruit diets in mainstream media. So I have albums. I've also got albums about athletes and fruitarian diets. And so Facebook is where I continually put out new information that I find. I've also got a website, which is fruitgod.com. I've got articles on there. It's not updated very, very often because I haven't, I've let it go a bit, but there are articles on there from a long time ago. So there's also some articles on there about my experiences on mono orange juice diets, and also Instagram. I'm Fruit is Butte on Instagram. Again, I put information and stuff out on Instagram. And I do have a PDF of my book. And if anybody wants a free copy of my PDF, if they email me at fruitbatann@yahoo.com, and that's fruitbatann, and Ann with an E, @yahoo.com, I'll send you a free PDF copy of my book. So they're the best ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to put this email there in the chat box. Thank you so much, Anne. And just to let you guys know, it's hard to do this alone, this lifestyle sometimes because of the challenges. And like Anne said at the beginning, it's super key to have community, to have support, guidance. So we do have a community here with Fran. We have a community to help people succeed with this lifestyle. So I'm going to also share that in the link here in case you are looking for a little more support on this journey of yours, because it's better to do it with others, I think. Right, Anne?
Yes, for sure. And it's fun. And, if you ever get a chance to go to any of the fruit festivals or fruit meetups, that's great, because it's just really nice to be in that environment with people that are similar to you. And the energy is always lovely at these events. So, yeah.
I agree. Are you going to be coming to the side of the world anytime soon?
I don't know, because now I'm working on the land. It's hard to get away. It's hard to travel because we have animals here that we feed, wild animals, and trees growing. And, if I can get someone to look after the place, but otherwise, I'm a bit of a hermit now. I stay here and I do my gardening and working towards self-sufficiency. And it's been beautiful life for me, but it means that I don't travel quite as much. But I would like to definitely go to some more fruit festivals at some point in the future, maybe when my gardens are a bit more established and I get somebody to maybe help look after them. Yeah.
Amazing. So you have a fruit forest growing. What do you have growing? What fruits?
Oh, lots of fruits, Chempedak, jackfruit, avocados, baby durians, mangoes, peanut butter fruit, blackberry jam fruit, figs, chocolate sapote, mamey sapote, white sapote, feijoas, guavas, just lots and lots of fruit. Yeah.
And so, I'll come look after you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to look after your farm. That sounds amazing. Eventually, you should maybe do some retreats there and we can come out to you.
Yes, I'm thinking of that. When things are a bit more established here, I would love to do some retreats here. It's a beautiful spot. We overlook mountains and we've got a swimming hole at the bottom of the garden as well. So it's a fantastic place to do retreats, that's for sure. I would love to do that in the future.
Amazing, Anne. And I appreciate you so much. I've learned so much from you today, and just following you. You helped me a lot with my pregnancy journey also, doing it raw. So I just want to thank you so much for all of the information that you share with us, all of your love, and you're just an amazing human. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.